I'm Sylvie from High Level Bandanas, and today we're gonna sew the easiest skirt and matching top ever, and the best part is that there's no measuring. 99% of the time I get my fabric at the thrift store. I just go and shop for a bedsheet. That is the cheapest way to get fabric, and you can usually find something pretty cute, especially because floral prints are super in right now. So I 100% recommend that. And then the other advantage to a bedsheet as opposed to just getting regular fabric at a fabric store is that if you're gonna do a hem on the bottom of a skirt or a dress, for example, like on this dress that I've made, the bottom is already hemmed for you. And on my lining skirt, I again just used the hem that was already included in the bedsheet, and that saves a ton of time and a ton of pain. But with all that said, today I decided to treat myself to a little trip to Fabricland. I don't have a Fabricland near me, so when I'm driving past it, I have to stop in. And originally I was just stopping in for notions and like lace trim and stuff, but I found a good sale. Definitely go for a bedsheet unless you find a sale like I did, but if you are Canadian and you have a Fabricland near you, just know that this fabric is currently in the clearance section for $9 a meter. This was worth it. I'm just gonna show you my little Fabricland haul right now. We got this beautiful lace trim that I'm for sure gonna be using for this project. We've also got this beautiful lace trim in yellow, cute little flowers on it, and then I got the same exact trim in pink. Then I also got this little strawberry applique, which is super cute. I also got 2 spools of off-white thread and this jumbo hank of braided elastic, and then everything here was on sale, especially with my society card. Not sponsored by Fabricland. I absolutely wish it was. And then the very last thing that I got was this beautiful yellow gingham fabric. And with all of that out of the way, let's just get right into the construction of the skirt. So you will need elastic. Just make sure that you have enough to go around your waist. You'll need a spool of thread. And for your main fabric, you'll probably want to go thrift a bed sheet for the lining. So I already have a white one that I can use. And then you can just use a bed sheet for the main fabric, which will save you a ton of money. But if you don't, I did just get 3 yards of this. I'm typically a size extra small. Depending on how puffy you want this is totally up to you. You can get more. Honestly, me at the end of the video would probably give you like better info on how much I actually use. And maybe I will leave that right here so that you guys can know. I'm gonna be a little bit backlit, sorry about that. We will get started by cutting the lining fabric. Oh my gosh. It's already hemmed at the bottom here, so this is going to be what I'm using for the bottom of my skirt lining. And to figure out how much I want and where I'm gonna cut. For the lining skirt, it's fine if it just gets to about my knees. Also, I have shorts under this. And I'm just gonna lay down, and I know that I want my skirt to kind of like start at my waist, so roughly here is where I'm gonna cut. As for how much I need, I'm gonna wanna make this kind of flowy on the inside as well. I don't want anything that's gonna be form-fitting or constricting. I'm just gonna cut way more than like what my regular waist would be. If you really wanna make sure you got more, just roll like a tortilla and then cut more than that. I know this is chaotic, but I promise you, this is going to work. Also, the trick to cutting in a straight line is once you've made that little indent where you know you want to cut it, just rip. And so when you've ripped enough, you'll be able to sort of see when you wrap it around yourself. So I know that all the way up to here will be way extra. So that's probably enough for me for the lining skirt. And this is what I mean, like a bedsheet just goes such a long way because you can make like so many dresses with just this one. Now I'm gonna make this little indent, just rip from there. So all I'm gonna need for my lining skirt is this rectangle, which is huge on me, and that is exactly what we want. Now moving on to the main fabric and cutting the main fabric pieces. I know for a fact, just laying on it with the skirt starting at my waist, that I've got so much real estate here to play with. And so for the first tier of the skirt, you're gonna cut about the same width that you did for your lining skirt so that the top is kind of frilly. Here I'm actually just laying the piece of fabric that I cut for my lining skirt over top of this. And I'm gonna be cutting it pretty much exactly at that same width. But now the length is going to be different because I want 3 tiers. But basically I know that with my lining skirt, I went all the way to like just past my knees. So for this, I'm gonna do halfway, and now I'm gonna cut that all the way across this way. Pretty much the same dimensions except shorter than my lining skirt. Now I want the second tier of my skirt. The thing with this tier is because we wanna ruffle it, we want it to look puffier than the first one, we're gonna make it wider than the first one. So I'm gonna give it probably an extra foot in width, more than my first tier. And then I'm gonna do the same thing for the last one. Now for the last one, when you pick the length that you wanna cut, you can either measure, so put those two pieces together and see how much is left from your waist down that you want, or just keep laying down beside it like I have been doing. I know it's a little bit less accurate, but it is easy and quick. Your third option is also to cut out whatever more than you think you need and then hem it at the end. And so there you go. You can see I've got my first, second, and third tiers, and then I've also got my lining skirt in the back. So now that we've cut that, we are back in action. And now you're gonna wanna cut your top piece in half. You're only cutting the top layer in half, not the other layers. Those you can just leave by themselves. So the reason we're cutting this in half is so that we're able to install pockets. For pockets, we're gonna be cutting 4 of essentially something that looks like this. This is just to give you an idea of what you sort of want your pocket to look like. So you could do any shape you want. You can obviously do it deeper than this. Once you sew, because there's going to be a seam allowance, it's gonna be a lot less deep. So I'm probably gonna be tracing this, but making the pocket a lot deeper. So just make sure that you have 4. And my tip to you would be to fold your fabric so that you are cutting through 4 layers at once, and then they'll be the exact same size. I'm just going to be using my blue water-soluble pen to just sort of like trace how I want it. Now I'm just going to take my roller, make sure all these layers on the inside are nice and flattened out, and start cutting. Here's my pocket, and I've got 4 pieces. Now it's time to pin and sew. So the first thing we're gonna do is grab the top layer. So you're gonna have your fabric with the right side facing you, and you're gonna grab one of your pockets, pin your pocket piece right side facing the right side of your top layer of your skirt. And I'm going about halfway down, and then you're gonna wanna pin another pocket in the same place on the other side. And now you're gonna repeat that on the other piece. To make sure that you have it in the same spot, I again recommend lining up your pieces one beside the other and pinning this in the exact same place. Or of course you could measure, but this is a non-measuring video, so we're gonna be chaotic about it. I'm gonna sew the pocket to the main fabric, so feel free to just use a simple straight stitch for this. For seam allowance, I know this is quite general, but I just align the fabric to where my pressure foot is, and that is all I do for seam allowance. Put my needle in, back stitch, and sew my pocket on. Now I'm just gonna be repeating that with all 4 pockets, so the 3 other pockets. We're gonna be going right back to pinning. So the right side should be facing you, but what you're gonna do now is flip your pocket out. Grab your other side, lay it on top, right sides together with the pocket flipped out, and make sure that you align the edges of the pocket here. And if you want to, you can iron this first, which will make it a little bit easier to sew, and make sure that the pocket is nice and aligned. And once you do have that pinned together, we're gonna start sewing. So we're gonna sew from the top around the pocket. So make sure that you are sewing this portion, not across here, otherwise you're gonna close off your pocket, and down. This though, I'm gonna do something a little bit different. So I've now set my length to S1, and I've selected this here with my width at a 2. And then my tension's still gonna stay at a 5 because this is still that same very light material. And what this does is it kind of acts like a serge. Just because I don't have a serger, this just gives me a nice clean edge, and it's gonna stop my fabric from fraying. I just wanted to show you guys, once I do get to the start of the pocket here, I'm going to make sure that my needle is all the way in, lift my foot, and then turn it so that it is facing this way. Put my foot back down, and now I don't have to do any sort of like awkward turning. I can just keep going. When I open it up here, you can see that there is my little pocket. Just a reminder, we are only doing this on the one side for now. We're not sewing the other side just yet. Now comes the tedious part, but we're gonna start doing a whole bunch of ruching. We're gonna grab this middle tier, and we're just going to be placing a basting stitch through it. For the basting stitch, I'm going to set the length to a 4. So that's the longest length that my machine can do. If you can go longer, go longer. And then this is just a straight stitch. Do not back stitch, because we're eventually gonna wanna take this out. And you're gonna just stitch kind of close to the edge. And once you get to the end, again, do not back stitch. Just take it out, leave long enough strands. Next, you're gonna grab a hold of one of the threads, and then you're going to start sort of like ruching this together. So we're just scrunching it, because you don't want to pull so hard that the thread is going to break. And there you go. Now we're gonna be pinning the layer that we just scrunched, so this middle tier, to the bottom of the top tier. Unscrunch it, drag it along, and make sure that our corners match up. So I've now pinned this perfectly into place, and now I'm going to sew this whole entire edge together. So I will be going back to that same fake serging stitch that I showed you guys earlier. So as you can see, I've got my little, what I call fake serge. It leaves all of this, which could fray, and this basting stitch that I frankly just don't want. So you can just go ahead and pull out the basting stitch, or I do recommend putting a zigzag stitch if you just did a straight stitch so that it prevents fraying. But if you did like me and you did this little stitch here, what I like to do, lay this out, grab my roller, and this seems a little intense, but I do just grab my roller and go about like 1/2 centimeter from the edge of where I sewed. And then that's just gonna like tremendously clean up this edge. Now we're gonna repeat exactly what we just did, but with the last bottom tier, and we're gonna sew that onto the bottom of the middle tier. All right, good morning. It is in fact the next day. This morning I got the 3rd layer on here, and as you can see, this is very, very long. It looks like I've got all of this of extra fabric. Mark that down with my little water soluble pencil. Make a quick little line at my ankle. For my hem on the bottom, I'm not gonna do just your regular old hem where you fold it in and fold it again. What I'm going to be doing is adding this beautiful lace trim that I got. So it like I'm sewing another layer of skirt on, so with the right sides together. And I'm gonna be doing that with that fake serge stitch that I've showed you guys. I don't actually know the name of that. I should probably find out because I use it so much. And then after that, I'm gonna iron it and top stitch it on so that it stays in place. Here's what the hem looks like on the outside, and then on the inside just look like this. Now's the last part with this main fabric. So now we're gonna make it a skirt. So we're gonna be putting right sides together this way, and we're going to sew along the entire side. So for this, it's going to be very similar to when we sewed this pocket on. So you're going to want to make sure that these pockets are flipped out. If you want to, you can press them to make sure that they're sticking out in the right direction. We're going to be sewing just like we did on the other side. So starting at the top, you're going to go down around the pocket and then down the entire side. Voila. Enter the lining. All you're going to do for this is sew the sides together and then hem it if it wasn't already hemmed. So for me, it was already a bed sheet, so it's already hemmed at the bottom like I showed you guys earlier. Once you've got that done, we're gonna flip this skirt right side out. This is my main layer of skirt, which is getting flipped right side out. And then we're gonna be placing the lining skirt inside of it, and then make sure that the side seam matches with the side seam on the inside of your skirt. And we're gonna pin that in place. And we're just gonna go ahead and place a basting stitch to stitch the lining skirt and the main skirt together at the very top. Now it is a lot less see-through. So it's Sylvie from the future here. I am wearing the top that we're gonna make later on in this video. I did finish it, but it looked like this. Just a little bit bulky at the waistline because I had attached a band. I just think there's too much fabric in here, so I'm gonna undo it and then continue the tutorial from here. If you're wondering why I'm wearing this top, for continuity purposes, that is why. Full transparency, sometimes we mess up. Once your two layers are basted together, we're now going to flip this wrong side out, meaning that your inner layer should be facing outwards. And then you are going to be folding this once over, like this, about 1 centimeter in, and then we're gonna be folding it one more time, and you're gonna want to make this a big enough fold so that your elastic will be able to fit through. So you can iron this down before you start sewing. Here is what mine looks like. It's just gonna be about 1 inch thick. My elastic is actually quite small, and I'm just gonna be doing a straight stitch that's gonna create this tube. And make sure when you get to the end that you leave it open. We're not going to sew anything closed yet. For this, you're going to want to sew as close as possible to the edge. So now I'm almost back at my starting point, which was right here. So I've got about 2 inches. Start threading my elastic through. So I'm going to show you how I measured my elastic from a previous clip because I don't feel like remeasuring it because I've already cut it, and yeah. Put it around where you want your dress to sit and make it as tight as you'd like it to be. Cut that where you measured. And to thread my elastic, I am just putting a safety pin, and I'm just gonna start feeding it through. Once the end of your elastic reaches this area, we're gonna stitch it into place. So I'll show you once I get there. I'm at the point now where my elastic just tucks right in under the band. So what I'm gonna do here, just give it a top stitch a couple times over to secure it into place. And I'm gonna continue threading it through. I am now back at the start. Now I'm gonna top stitch this side of the elastic in place as well. Once that is done, the last thing you're gonna do is close off this hole here. So make sure your elastic is stretched out when you do this. And then once you flip it right side out and cut all the loose threads, that's it for the skirt. Oh yeah, that is like 10,000 times better than what I had earlier. That's so much more clean. I'm so happy with it. And my little pockets. Eee! Time to make the easiest shirt that you've ever made in your whole entire life. So first of all, we're gonna start by laying the main fabric over top of the lining fabric. Essentially what we're gonna be doing here is cutting a giant rectangle, and you want that rectangle's length to be wider and more than from the top of your boobs, I guess, to below. So for me, I'm gonna make it probably 10 inches long, and then we're gonna cut a very large rectangle so that it has room to go fully around your entire torso and tie a bow in the back or not in the back. I've got my two very long rectangles. Now what I'm gonna do is cut 4 straps. Now these straps are going to tie into a cute little bow at the top here, so I'm gonna make them pretty long, and now I'm going to fold them and sew them down the long side. Then I also sewed one end of it shut, but the other side will be open so that we can turn the tube, which is the next step. Even better than using a safety pin, use a giant knitting needle like this. And there is one strap. Once you finally got your 4 straps and you've turned them, we're gonna start placing them in the middle. Now here's where you might want to do a little bit of measuring. One in the middle here, and then one on the other side. And then what I like to do is just lift this and put it on myself. So now I know that my straps are actually a little bit too far apart. With my straps in place like this, I know this is where I want them. The other thing you could do is also take a tank top and see where they hit. Now I'm gonna put my second set of straps. I am pinning them to the right side of the fabric. And now what I'm gonna do is bring the right side of my lining fabric and pin it to the right side of my main fabric with the straps in the middle like that. And now I'm just sewing both of these into place. So now what I'm gonna do is just sew down the sides. Flip this right side out, and it should already start looking like a fun little cute shirt. And then you're gonna be taking this to the ironing board and ironing the top and the sides flat. Next, I'm gonna grab my piece of lace, the same one that I put on the bottom of the skirt, and I'm gonna measure just what the front is. I just used my water-soluble pen to place a little dash here of where I want my lace to start. So grab the side that's not done. You're gonna fold it in about 1 centimeter on either side, sew that together. I do recommend that you iron this beforehand so that you're not struggling. And for this, you're gonna sew as close as possible to the edge so that it looks the cleanest that you can. Now that I'm coming across that little blue mark that I've made, I'm gonna grab my lace, and then this is going to get inserted here so that it sticks out the bottom. Once you get down, don't tie off, just turn, and we're gonna top stitch very close to the edge on the entire sides and top. And once you've done that, that's literally it. Like, this is the easiest thing that you could possibly make. And then the grand reveal. And that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you do make this, definitely give me a tag at High Level Bandanas. That's on Instagram or on TikTok. I just love seeing when you guys make the stuff that I make. It makes my heart warm. And on that note, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!